Previously, I made a video review in memory of George Romero, but I wouldn't be a good fan if I didn't acknowledge another legend's passing this year, and thus this video has been made. Prolific horror director Tobe Hooper, whose films include The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Poltergeist, and Life Force, just to name a few, passed away at the age of 74 from natural causes. As a tribute, I've decided to look at one of his notable works, but not one that's as well known as those I've mentioned, at least not to the casual viewer. But first, some context. Nightmare on Elm Street came from small roots, but come 1987, with the success of the third installment Dream Warriors, which is also a great film in its own right, and the continued happy days following 1988's The Dream Master, which isn't, you couldn't get away from Freddy Krueger's Christmas jumper. It was only natural, of course, they'd make the leap from the big screen to the small one. Freddy's Nightmares began in 1988 and ran until 1990. The documentary Never Sleep Again goes into detail regarding the show, but doesn't spend as long on it as they do the original films. In a nutshell, they believe it wasn't the best, but they tested the waters on what you could show on television at the time, also discussing the bizarre choice a few television stations made when airing them. I have watched the show, and though I agree in some regards with what they've said, Freddy's Nightmares has some credibility and staying power, especially when you remember how many famous people worked on it. Toby's episode, No More Mr. Nice Guy, was the first to be produced and serves as the pilot to Freddy's Nightmares. It tells the story of Fred Krueger's origin as Master of Bad Dreams, and later on a one-liner spouting Mascot of Evil. Curiously, on the Blu-ray box set of the original Nightmare films, this isn't included, but two other episodes, Killer Instinct and It's a Miserable Life, are. I don't get that. Perhaps it's down to rights or something like that. I don't know. I was first made aware of the show flicking through the stations of my television years back and seeing an ad for it on what I believe was the Horror Channel. Didn't find it that scary, which wasn't the intention, of course, and I don't think I was as aware of the series as I am now. I'd pretty much forgotten its existence until Never Sleep Again reminded me it was a thing. But what of the episode itself? What do I think of it? Well, I say it's a mixed bag. I know this is a tribute video and all, but it's important to acknowledge when someone got it right and when they didn't. And, you know, we're all human, none of us are perfect. I think that Toby definitely made the most out of what he could. Watching this, I can see he wasn't given as much time and money to work with as he did with Salem's Lot. Going off on a tangent, if you haven't seen the Salem's Lot miniseries or film as we got over here, you should. It's a little goofy looking back on it nowadays, but it's also pretty damn terrifying. Back to my point. I can see why this wasn't given as much time like a lot of the Elm Street films, but I feel Hooper did well with what he had. Production values aren't so much of a problem as the strength of the writing. What I really like about this pilot, though, is how Freddy is realised. Much like the first film in A New Nightmare, you don't get a good look at his face even before he's burned, and he's often in the shadows. This works best because it makes the makeup look not only less obvious but more effective. What you don't see is scarier than what you do see, that kind of thing. Makes him enigmatic. Now, you could mock this as over the top, but I don't mind it, it's different. And of course, Robert Englund is a part of this episode. He doesn't say much, but what he does say is always given without any lack of enthusiasm. My favourite bit is when the parents confront him and he doesn't show any signs of repentance. He's that unsympathetic, that unregenerate. He doesn't beg for his life, he practically begs for them to commit arson. Robert's also pretty good when he does the bookends of the show, and I love his line about how it's not your nightmare, this time it's one of mine. My problems with this story are twofold and overlap each other. Firstly, as significant as Freddy's origin is, they're a bit too loose with the continuity. The story's apocryphal. In the films, Krueger was let off because someone neglected to sign a search warrant, but here it's because he wasn't read the Miranda rights. Side note, isn't that a very amateurish rookie mistake for a well-established police officer to make? Also, it's stated they lit his house on fire in previous and later works, but in Freddy's Nightmares, they burn him in his boiler room, his place of operation. I know I should expect these kind of plot holes, considering I love the Universal Monsters films and Doctor Who, which more so than this contradicts itself left, right and centre. And you might think I'm being petty here by knocking off points because it doesn't match up, but it's a problem to me and it does impact on my overall experience and enjoyment watching it. Secondly, there aren't any characters from the films, which is a big missed opportunity. How cool would it have been to get John Saxon and Ronnie Blakely back for this, or have appearances by a younger Nancy Dina Rodder Glenn? I understand the legal problems or budget, I get all that, but come on, that would have been amazing. The bit with the policeman and his family just isn't as compelling without the connection to the characters from the main series. Is it just me who thinks that? Let me know if you agree or disagree. No More Mr. Nice Guy is pretty much a one-off story. The premise for the series was going to be all about Freddy, but they knew it would get old very, very quickly, and opted for a different anthology format. While I don't particularly care for the other episodes, I would rather take different stories revolving around Springwood than just have Freddy show up and kill some teens who, unless they're Dream Warriors or Nancy, you don't give a shit about. Or the other cast from the first film. I recommend you have a look at Tobe Hooper's contribution to the Elm Street franchise if you're a horror fan or if you're interested, but I can't guarantee it'll knock your socks off. It was made in the late 80s and you can tell straight away down to incidental music, lighting, writing, all that. So if you want to watch a staple of the Freddy mania of yesteryear, and if you're interested in the works of the late great Tobe Hooper, then you should give it a watch. I'll take this over a weak confrontation and amateurishly made montage any day. So long, Mr. Hooper. Thanks for scaring us senseless with not only classic horror but underappreciated gems.